guys want to talk about the most difficult session that you've ever played on?
Jingle Bell Rock. Had to play it exactly like the original record.
Steve Gibson tells me that that's two guys on Jingle Bell Rock.
Oh! Well, there we go, right?
John Williams?
The John Williams, that was pretty hard.
You know what the odds of that happening were?
It was 1 billion to 1.
No, 100% because it happened.
It happened, exactly.
So I screwed up one tune and I just blew until I knew what key we were in and I kept blowing.
Yeah. All right.
And one of the tunes they want me to play is Peg. And Dean the guitar. He can play it better than I can. I did it with the flat of this finger, just so you don't forget. That's right.
Yeah.
Tim, your turn. Come on, Tim. 3.5 hours, man. I shit you not.
This intro is from a video that I call the Lost Jay Graydon, Dean Parks, Tim Pierce session. It happened in July of 2021. I couldn't find where the tracks were. It was an impromptu hangout at Jay's house. He called me up. We've been friends for years and said, hey, you want to come over and hang out? So Tim and I went over there. I had a camera and one light in my car, and Dean Parks was there, and I had met Dean before. And Jay had one camera and a light, so we put them together, and we made this video. It's basically like a barbershop hangout or something, talking about session guitar and their experiences, and it's really interesting. It doesn't really have an ending, but I think you'll find this fascinating. Here it is. Hey everybody, I'm Rick Beato. I'm here with Tim Pierce, Dean Parks, and the guest of honor, Mr. Jay Graydon.
Thank you.
These gentlemen are all legends. I'm honored to be here at Jay's studio. Jay, here's a video of you playing with Al Jarreau in 1981. You began your studio career in the 70s. What was it like when you started?
The very first union date I did was in 1969. I think I was 19. And I didn't catch on right away. It took me, actually, Dean is the guy that got me going big time in the early 70s. He recommended me, you know, for 2 weeks of Motown dates, and then it just opened a can of worms. I was working around the clock, 20 dates a week. And I got to tell you, man, I loved what I did. I loved being a studio guitarist. I loved playing different styles of music. I loved the challenge of the reading stuff. And I loved playing lines, fills, solos, rhythm, whatever. Then I got burnt out. After 10 years, I didn't want to do it anymore because I realized there were a lot of producers that were skaters who were just basically businessmen that lucked into this gig. And they'd pick the songs and they'd hire us to arrange.
And you guys would actually be the producers.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I didn't want to make the blood money anymore. I wanted to make mailbox money. And I'm really glad I made the shift when I did. It was around 1980 or 79, because the music business of the studio musician by the mid-80s was in big trouble. These guys are two of the only few that survived, literally. And I used to tell my buddies, man, like Scotty Edwards, a great bass player, I said, if you don't move on to TV and film, you're going to be done. There's going to be a new set of cats. But then who knew about free music and budgets going down the drain?
Okay, wait, before we go on to free music,
okay,
let's talk about some of these important records that you guys were on. Like, for example, we were talking earlier about Steely Dan is very popular on my channel. When I did a breakdown of Kid Charlemagne, it's one of my biggest videos. Okay, tell me about you guys worked with Steely Dan. What were those sessions like, for example?
Let's start with Dean on this, because he played on about 50. I think you're the most recorded guitarist, you and Larry, right?
On Steely Dan, yeah, probably so. I was maybe on more of the albums.
You played a solo.
Than anybody else for some reason, because I would do little utility parts too, acoustic
and Walter,
parts.
Yeah, you and Walter were tight.
we got to be friends later, after after he and Donald split up, sort of, when he was doing some producing things, I became friends with him. We weren't, I didn't know him very well. But they started using studio players on Pretzel Logic. I secretly think maybe it's because Walter just wanted to see Chuck Rainey play bass on everything. Because he was a total Chuck fan.
Well, he should be.
He should be. And Walter is a great bass player. I mean, I've played on some sessions of his own album where he's playing live bass, and it was...
With his fingers?
No, pick. That was great.
Yeah, I figured.
And the demos, I did a couple of rhythm charts for on Asia, 4 rhythm charts. And the demos I would get would be, I believe Donald was probably on a Wurlitzer. I don't think it was a Rhodes. Wurlitzer, click, bass, and vocal. And basically, this is on, Josie was one of the ones. All the ideas were there in what they did on that little demo. So I just, you just write that stuff out so that we could read it in the session.
That's what Larry did too. When like he wrote out Peg, for example.
Yeah, it's probably all on the demo.
It is.
All of the voicings, and Donald gave me a little sheet that showed me what all the voices were, that usually a major chord over a different bass note, the tricky,
right.
It was poly chords, but that's what mainly it was, and occasionally an augmented chord or something. It's very interesting to work with them, though, because they recorded, let's think, it was in the 70s, and, you can remember how long it would take some engineers to get a drum sound, and especially the big rock bands and stuff. They'd spend hours or maybe days getting a drum sound before they started cutting an album.
People don't realize this.
And to listen back with the full monitors and these monitors, you had speaker, and then another one over here, and people would listen loud, and it would be. They'd have the echo going, and it would be just pumping. Well, at a Steely Dan session, they Roger would put a mic in front of the amp. That's your guitar sound.
That's right.
And the drums were dry.
Roger
Nichols.
Yeah. Right.
Their engineer, who engineered all their demos when they were songwriters, I believe.
Right.
And all those early albums, too. Genius guy.
Brilliant.
He made it easy for them to have whims because he could figure it out, whatever they wanted. But you were getting no juice from the playback. It was like, okay.
Wow.
And they were listening to every little thing, and especially the drummers, because what they really wanted was the great drum track. You couldn't, it was analog tape.
Yeah.
You certainly can't punch out of a drum thing into an existing drum track. We weren't using clicks, by the way.
How would you just whoever was playing drums would just count off, right?
Count it off, and the drum track has to be perfect.
Yeah,
all the way through, many times, for every take. Like the best studio players in that day, and this goes for. The trumpet players in a movie session, or, Vince DeRosa on French horn. How you played it on the read down is important. It sounds like it's done on the read, but you've changed little things or have to change things with the film or whatever. It's how good you sound on the 7th take, the 12th take, because it has to be like it's the first take.
So how many drum takes would they do on a song?
It's hard to say, but they would niggle about the hi-hat patterns or something, and kind of take the drummers out of their comfort zone. I felt, because drummer, it's kind of a rolling jumble of habits.
Yeah.
With a drummer, and they were taking this little habit and saying, well, could you just do it with the upbeats on the hi-hat here? Simple thing, but it was like all of a sudden that's all the drummer was thinking about is what they were going to have to do in the verse every time.
Yeah.
And it was hard for them to collect. So it was a process. I remember on the Asia sessions that we thought we weren't going to get a take during the first 3 hours, go to lunch, come back and get it in the first couple of run-throughs, because it would all gel and everybody would remember all the various instructions. And
would you guys have the parts memorized, though, after going through them so many times?
Well, I was not a memory guy. Road guys are memory guys.
That's right.
David Gates and Brett did some reunion touring in '76 and asked me to be on that. And I met some guys in a group, Chuck Fiore on bass, Bo, drums. Anyway, great band that was opening for us on half the tour. And these guys had huge memories. They couldn't read very well. They couldn't sight read because they didn't have any habits. There's no place you'd do that. But one time through, and they would remember it. I've heard that Bernard Purdy was that kind of a drummer too. He would remember. He would actually be teaching the guys the arrangement after he heard it once. I only worked with him once, and it was on the Haitian divorce thing.
I'd like to take a second to talk to you about this channel. Believe it or not, 57% of the people that watch here regularly are not subscribed. So I would encourage you to hit the subscribe button now. This will help me get even more of my dream guests in the future. Thank you.
Memory, you really, as a studio player in those days, you're attached to a piece. Your memory is there on the paper, which actually frees you up to remember other things about your part.
That's very well put, man. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah. So your memory is wide open for coming up with an interesting lick here or an interesting, you can make notations. I do make notations about when I get an interesting idea for the chorus or whatever. And even if I go to some other thing that seems more interesting, then at least I can revert back to it because I know how to write what I can hear.
Where would you guys typically sit on a session if you're doing, let's say you were doing Steely Dan session, would you be out,
This
out in
close.
the room?
Yeah, this
With a
close.
gobo.
That would be Chuck Rainey on bass, and this would be me and Victor.
Wait a second. This close to each
Oh,
other?
yeah, for two guitars?
Because the bass is direct.
Right.
My amp is back where that amp is.
Okay.
Mic'd.
Gobo back
But the
there.
drums are here. Here's Keltner.
Yep.
And here's Victor Feldman on Rhodes over here.
Oh my God.
And so that's what you do. So you could, actually the first sessions I did, all the headphones were just single headphones. This was in 1970. And they didn't have individual mixes for guys or anything. That tech wasn't there. And so you would, and I think some of the real classic records, they weren't headphones.
They just play.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just listen in the room.
Ray Parker was
Yeah.
saying that in Motown, they all plug into this big direct box with one
That's
speaker.
right.
Right, yeah.
That's right.
You seen a picture of that?
Yeah.
That's a
Pretty funny.
wild
Well, and wouldn't
thing.
the room get
including
so
the
full
bass.
of case? The room would get so full of cases and gear, it would be like this, right? And even a big room, you'd have to sit close because there was so much gear in the room,
Well,
right?
that's probably true. I think we have a guitar trunk would be in the room usually. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, our trunks were always around, and when dates were crowded, I got a
Trunks,
great
that's
story.
another thing you should know about.
You remember Red Mandel?
Trunks were, yes.
Go ahead, finish your thought.
Yeah. Well, we can get back to it.
Well, Dean and I both I had two trunks because I just carry so much crap.
You're talking about trunks to carry gear in.
Yeah,
Guitars
big
and things
anvil
like that.
trunks,
Yeah.
And it was a movie date at H.B. Barnum's studio. You remember H.B.'s studio?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, it wasn't that big of a room. We had a bunch of horn players and a rhythm section, right? So I had two guitars out because I would go from electric to acoustic and back and forth. There was this contractor named Red Mandel, and he wasn't, let's say, the happiest guy on the planet, right? And he had a little bit of an attitude problem, okay? Well, the room's crowded, man, but I got to have my guitars here. He trips over my guitar case and starts screaming at me, right? And it's 8 a.m, too.
Oh, my God.
Oh, God. Okay, move that thing, move the thing. I said, okay, I'll move it. I never moved it. He tripped over it again about an hour later. Let's get back to Steely Dan because I got some great stories. Okay. When Fagan made his solo album, you probably don't know the story, Dean. Abraham Royale played on the tune about the bomb shelter, I think it is. The tune that's got Tuesday Weld in the lyric, right? And the line goes something like bump, bum, 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 bump, bum, bum. In other words, there's grease into the third, right? From the second to the third. Okay, Abraham had played the tune for hours and hours and hours and hours. And then Donald, man, who says very few words until it's time to offer an idea, other than just say, let's do it again. He says, Abraham, you hear that bar right there where you're going, dump, dum, dum? Abe says, yeah. He says, play the whole tune like that. This is like 7 hours into the session.
Oh my God.
Right? So they started all over again, you know, and Abe did. And I'm sure Donald worked him hard. Now, I didn't mind Donald working me hard because I work me hard. When I'm playing, I want it to be great, just like you guys. Okay. They cut the peg track at least 6 or 7 times. Did you ever play in a tracking date?
For that song?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Did you play it solo?
No.
They ended up with Rick Marotta. And the whole thing about keeping Rick was the hi-hat groove. The way he played that little tilt was so special. I mean, every time, but the first time you hear that, and every time you hear it from then on, that's the whole little capture part of the song, other than the changes.
Right.
Then as soon as they got that drum track, they stripped it down to nothing, put Chuck on, maybe he had guide chords, I don't know, and built it up one by one.
Oh, wow. Did they?
Yeah, stripped it down to nothing. So
When you came in to play the solo, though, were there vocals on the track or not?
yes, I was the last thing to do.
Okay.
And they wouldn't go on another track. We had to stay on one track. Donald says, I don't like doing that. I don't like doing that, right?
Just one solo, right? One
You
solo
just throw it away and do another solo.
Right.
Yeah.
And whatever.
You
I
can't go
do
back
there,
to the previous
It's
solo.
over.
Yeah, that's
It's in magnetic heaven, man.
Yeah.
You know.
Magnetic Heaven.
Yeah. To stay from now forevermore.
forever.
So now Donald's a great producer because he said the magic words after an hour and a half of me playing my dig me, pop, pseudo, bebop, all majory sounding. He said, think blues. I go, wait a minute, think blues. We got C major 7 to B to G2 over a B in the bass. C major 7, can't play blues on that very well. G2, B in the bass. No seventh. Dominant. Okay, dominant there. To A minor 7, back to the G over the B in the bass. Dominant. And even on the A minor, because it gives you a feeling we're going back to 1, but what is 1? Right? Is it C or G? So anyway, I just thought, okay, I'm going to try to keep that in my head. I spilled over into blues on the major 7th chord, you know, a couple of times.
Yeah.
But, and I shut my eyes, man. I remember doing this. I just went for it. If I crashed into a musical brick wall, I didn't care. I wanted to do something different. So I did the Tedesco thing of reaching. Did I make it? I hope so.
Wow. You were
I did
eyes
this before
closed?
you told me. I did, eyes closed. I just did it. And I go, okay, I'm going to wander my way down. Now, not the whole time, but I remember for at least one walk down lick and one walk up lick. And when I got into the thing I was with Carlton at the AES show, and Peg had first come on the radio and it was a hit, and that's part where I go, dot-a-loo-dot-oodle-dot, break, dot-a-loo-dot-oodle-dot, with the rest in between. Carlton said, punch. I said, wrong.
Punch, wrong.
And right. And then so Donald put me on the right path. Okay?
Yeah.
I borrowed the Amos Garrett lick that I wore
The opening
out.
lick is just so, the opening lick, the double stops are
Yeah.
so unique.
But you know what we were all listening to then is Midnight at the Oasis.
Amos
We
Garrett.
were all trying to get the 2 bends.
We did.
I mean, you can do 2 bends on the, with the 3rd and the 2nd string, and the 3rd string goes up a whole step, and the 2nd string goes up a half step.
It's real tricky.
But to do
Really
it
hard
where
to
they're
do.
both going up a whole step,
It's so hard.
that was so wacky, and that was just our favorite wacky solo.
It was.
Amos Garrett.
It
on
was.
that, and we were all just between songs
drooling over
just
it.
figuring that out.
I
And
went-
so you used it
I used it.
and made
By the
something
way,
new out of it. It was
do you remember the whole solo on Midnight at the Oasis? You remember the part that goes, da?
yeah.
I went to Ted Green's house with a record, okay? And he needle dropped it. I go, Ted, what is this? I went, Barry's Wag. We went together. And I said, what is this, Ted? And he put it on, picked up the needle quick, and thought about it for a second. Put it on, picked up the needle real quick after the phrase. He says, it's this. So it's a E7 on the D. Hand me that guitar for a second, would you, Tim? Thanks, pal. Steve Vai signature guitar. I got a plectrum. Okay, so it's E. I think I'm in the shot, Rick.
Yeah.
Okay. Hammer on A.
Right.
Hammer on B minor. Hammer, I'll slide to E9. So, one finger E7, hammer on A, hammer on B minor, slide up to E9.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Only
I'm
one
not
pick.
doing it long enough.
Pick it.
One stroke. No, he doesn't pick it, does he? It's all hammers. It's all slides and hammers. So anyway, I can't believe I remember that. It's come up after this. Thank you, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
So then Donald in instruction land said, play something fast there. I said, okay. And fast. And then I shut my eyes again and I walked down. Or that's what, I know for sure I shut my eyes on one of the walk downs. I had to look at the very end of that one.
Yeah.
Now, Dean knows this solo, and so does Tim, and so do you. Dean called me and said, I'm playing with Fagan for Congress, for the House and the Senate. And one of the tunes they want me to play is Peg. He said, will you show me the solo? You tell the rest of the story.
I simply asked you, I said, because I had the amazing slow downer.
Yep.
And listened to the thing. And, wow, the first note, you think it's two notes. But the first note's just one note. And then he adds in the second note.
And Dean the guitar. He can play it better than I can. That's it.
That's the way.
Except, hold on a second. Hold on. I did it with a flat of this finger.
Oh, no, you did it with one finger?
Right.
Oh,
That's so much harder.
That's
Yeah.
good. I would never rely on that.
That's it. Now, the second time I play them both together.
Right.
Right. That's a bend. That's a bend. The second one's a bend. That's right.
But you go to fret there.
Yes.
Yeah. I wrote the whole thing out.
I'll give you the part. You can put it up.
Yeah.
That's it. That's right. Except I'm on another set of strings.
Right.
Kind of. The last one was a half step up. No, you're out of the scale. Think G dominant. Da, da, A on the second fret, then pull it off to the open string. Then the next, that's close.
That's it.
Play.
You started.
Oh.
That's the lick. Just so you don't forget. Close. That's close. No, third. You bend up to the third. That's right. That's right.
Is it half step bend?
That's right. Now then you go to the second fret. Yeah, that's
can't-
right.
that's-
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Tim,
Okay, Tim.
your turn. Come on, Tim. Your turn. This is like a pig hang.
That's how I was at. 3 frets? No?
I don't know. I don't remember.
I think you did. I think it was a three fret bend.
Right?
Sounds
It
like a
probably
fret bend.
was. Hey, by the way, between all of us here, we'll keep this a secret. Nobody will know. 9, 11, 14.
Oh.
14 for the G string. 3 frets was no problem.
Yeah.
Neither was a fifth.
Tuning was a problem.
Not really, because that guitar had such low frets on it. The finger pressure.
What were you playing? What kind of guitar?
The 335.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wanna see it?
With low.
Nines though.
With 9, 11, 14.
14. Wow.
Yeah. 9, 11, 14.
Really light.
Worn out frets. When I bought the guitar, I never had it refretted for one reason. It would play in tune when I'd play chords. Like when I slamming my fingers down for pressure, it wouldn't take it sharp. I mean, literally, that guitar played in tune. It made bending very difficult.
Yeah, because you really had to grab it. But
And
you had
I
little
really had to
strings,
grab the
yeah.
double stops.
So this
But I got
last
used
thing,
to it.
It wasn't. It was here.
The second fret bend.
Second fret bend.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
No, it's I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that's just
Yeah.
nice there.
But with a 14, doable, no problem.
Right. That's a 6, 7 to 16 on that guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with higher frets, it's easier to do, of course, because the frets are higher, But this was my setup, and I just got used to it.
Yeah.
But I really did
We all
play
used
rhythm.
nines, though, back
We
then.
did. But you used 9, 11,
So
16.
interesting. I always tell
But Larry
people.
Carlton had his strings up this high, really high.
Really?
That's
Really
why
high.
his sound was so
And I
big.
believe Louis Shelton did too, and maybe that's
But with
why he did it.
nines or tens?
Nines.
Nines. We all used nines.
We never used
I
ten.
tell people, okay, so you guys are hearing this here. I always tell people this later gauge. I said, I would tell people used to use nines, eights, but like very few people that I knew used tens back when I started playing in the 70s.
Nobody.
That's right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And nobody believes that.
Well, why
Eights a lot,
not?
Too. I
Eights
use
a
eights.
lot.
when
I used
started
to- I
out,
use
used
eights now.
Yeah.
You use eights?
I use eights now, yeah.
Yeah.
I used to break eights. I know a cat that uses a 7. Dig that. One of the guys in, who are the guys with the beard?
Billy
ZZ
Gibbons.
Top.
Yeah,
Billy
yeah,
Gibbons.
that's-
Oh,
seven.
yeah, that's
He does,
a
yeah.
7, huh?
Right. By the way, man, there was a country player. Ooh, dig this. This is so good. John Carruthers was telling about this. There was a country player that used 12, 14, 14.
Oh, wow. Whoa.
He wanted the fat tone for
on
the
the
two
first
high.
well, yeah,
But he was using the G to bend. That's how he was using the telly. He wanted to just bend the hell out of the G.
Yeah, why
string.
not? Who's the victim?
Yeah, it was the victim. The guy playing it from the other part of the neck. Hey, that would be great. Have 2 guys play the guitar. 1 guy just on the 3rd string.
I have a question, since you're sort of a historian, maybe. Do you know what Hendrix played gauge-wise?
I think that he played nines.
Yeah.
I think that he played nines.
probably.
2.5 step. Yeah. Yeah.
And
He was
I
down to
know-
E flat.
But do you know about
Yeah.
the British? The British guys didn't get. I guess Ernie Ball wasn't out yet, and they were using the rock gauge of Fender, which has a 10. But it gets very thin down in the bottom. Like it's not. It's like a.
I know,
It's
like
like a 9 set on the bottom, but there's a 10 on the top. It's stiffer on the top.
From the high E, 10, 13, 15, 26, 32, 38. That is one weird hybrid set.
I know that Van Halen used Fender bullets that were 9 through 40.
40
played.
is that?
40
That's slider.
42, yeah, 42 would
Okay.
be normally
Dario-
down a half step too.
Dario
Down a
makes,
half step. That's-
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Dario makes a 9.5. And I never tried it. Do you guys ever try
Buzz Featon uses that.
No.
Buzz does?
Yeah, right. When I last talked to him, he used a 9.5. Yeah.
Huh. Hey, by the way, you guys want to talk about the most difficult session that you've ever played on, or the most challenging, the hardest?
Yeah, I'll talk about. There was one I did the
John Williams?
John Williams. That was pretty hard, just because it was so written out. He wrote it as though Leo Kottke made it up.
Tell him what instrument.
my.
Tell him, Dean.
Half
make
of it was
sure-
on 12 string.
There you
So,
go.
yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
And I couldn't have played it on my old 12 string. I had just worked on Walter Becker's album in Hawaii, and my Martin 12 string had fallen apart. It does that thing where the
The bridge lifts up in the back.
yeah the whole
Coming
little
up.
round, that little round, it all just shifts up, and it was like a mess. And I asked the guy that was his like gardener, but he also plays guitar. I said, "You don't have a 12 string for sale?" Why would I ask a guy in Maui? Anyway, he said, "Yeah, I do.
You know what I think?
I have
By the way,
I have a D18, and I just I had the neck reset by Grimes.
What?
Did it?
That's
And it
crazy.
played just beautiful, and it's just like, but I never played a 12 string like this. So I bought it, and then like a month later,
you got the call.
I got the call, and I had the guitar.
You know what the odds of that happening were?
It was 1 billion to 1.
No, 100% because it happened.
It happened exactly.
So what was so this chart that you get? you set it down, and then what do you say? when you
Well,
look at it?
fortunately, he sent it to me early.
Okay.
So, it was, I did get the benefit of looking at it. But, some of the things to play, and I could have just flat picked through it, and clunk, 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 you get the notes, and
Two positions.
it's probably would be great. But some of the stuff, it was better if these strings were open and I could do pull-offs. So I kind of worked on all that, maybe tune strings down and then put a 1-fret capo, just for the particular cue, because it was, it was a problem, but it was a finite problem. It was just these cues, and so anyway.
Name what it's
But
from.
yeah, I should do that. It's
I haven't heard this yet, and I'm really excited.
Rosewood is the name of the
film.
Yeah.
Well, when you tell me it was hard as hell to play, it was hard as hell to
Yeah.
play. I'm sure of it. You told me you learned it in 2 positions, so you didn't have to look down. I mean, look up to. I mean, you didn't have to look at the neck. You say you worked the whole thing out in 2 positions, right?
Well, each cue had its own problem.
So there were a bunch of cues.
Oh yeah. There were like 15, 20
Jeez.
things, but some of them weren't as hard as this. There were really like 4 that were a problem.
12. It's not like you practiced
But it's
12
a full
string.
orchestra there, so
No pressure.
no.
Tim?
It's an emotional problem. I was a chord chart guy most of the time, so my hardest session was just getting rattled, and that was Richard Perry. Rattled me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
He could do it.
Yeah, just all over me about, we were doing one of those very special Christmas records, with Randy Travis. You remember those records that you used to do every year, the Christmas records? And he was all over me about playing this Bill Haley and the Comets. It was Rock Around the Clock. And I had to play it exactly like...
Or Jingle Bell Rock?
Jingle Bell Rock, that was it, yeah. Had to play it exactly like the original record. And wasn't
I have a story about that when we finish.
Okay, good. Wasn't quite the same. Then we changed keys, because you do that with a country singer. You're always changing keys. And I was trying to get it, and I got rattled. And he was all over me more, and I got more rattled. And I actually, at a certain point, thought, okay, I'm just going to walk out of here. But then I looked, and there was, Jim Cox and Lee Sklar and Lenny Castro.
Not complaining.
But it was like, okay, if I leave, it makes it extremely hard on all these guys.
Oh.
Because I was like, it was horrible. And then we got through it, and I got it. It sounded okay, but I was not,
Feeling good, yeah.
Every muscle was tight, you know what I'm saying? Randy Travis, he looked at me. He felt so sorry for me. He said, "Hey man, yeah, thanks so much." I remember when I left, he said, "So you out of here?" I mean, he was like, you could tell
That's very nice of him.
Yeah, he was really, really. He felt sorry for me. But what happened? I went and had lunch with my wife, and then I went to my very first Trevor Horn session. And Trevor loved what I did, and I ended up working with Trevor for 15 years after that. So it was the kind of days you used to do a lot in one day sometimes. The first half of the day was a nightmare. The second half of the day was a Rod Stewart record with Trevor Horn.
Which opened up a whole...
Totally different.
Yeah, and I ended up working with Trevor for 15 years after that one day.
So my story is that Steve Gibson tells me that that's 2 guys on Jingle Bell Rock.
Well, there we go, right?
Well, Twilight Zone's 2 guys.
Yeah, it is.
It is. It's a common tone. I'll play it in a minute.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, I'll play it in a minute. We'll have fun with that. Okay, I got a story, guys. TV 2nd annual Rock and Roll Award show. All right? I get called for guitar 1, and Freddie Tackett gets called for guitar 2.
So what year would this be, Jay?
77, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there. The first year of the Rock and Roll Awards, I played that gig too. Now, that was with a big band. It was me and Ira Newborn on guitars.
Yeah.
And this year, they decided to make it more rock and roll, so they put the melody... Well, let me back up. When you have a big band playing the melody... You're sitting there with a chart in front of you. You don't know who the winner is, and you've got 5 cues or 6 or 7 cues.
Right. The title of the film above each stage.
Right.
Yeah.
The winner is number blah, blah, blah. And then the conductor, the fingers, this doesn't mean 3 sharps in this case. This means
number 3.
Number 3. Okay. 3, 4, right? Okay, written everything twice speed. Instead of sixteenths and eighths like we're used to seeing, it was written out in
cut
quarters
time,
and cut time.
Yeah.
It was written out. Okay, and I'm the only guy with the melody. So here's the winner. Go. I shit you not. 3.5 hours, man. And this guy was so laid back. He was some Canadian guy, and he just didn't get the fact that he wrote it out wrong to begin with. I told him that, but you know, and
Was
Freddie
it Jimmy Dale?
No.
Because he used to do that for the Sonny and Cher show.
No.
He would write it out in cut time because it's twice as many measures.
Right,
so
for
his
the bread.
orchestration bill was twice
double. So that's why I figure he did it.
and the charts were this long, right?
Right. I screwed up one tune and I just blew until I knew what key we were in, and I kept blowing. Right?
Yeah. All right. Rock and roll.
Then now this is the best part of the whole thing and made it all worth it. I used to do Christian dates at Whitney, and it was Steve Lefevre on bass.
Yeah.
It was a guy named John Keane, not Tom Keane's brother, but another Fred somebody on drums, and Frank was the engineer at Whitney.
Yeah.
So I walk into the session Monday morning, and I hear these guys talking about, did you see the Rock and Roll Award show? He says, man, that guitar player, man, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes. This cat was the only guy with a melody, man. I mean, he did great. And I said, yeah, and there was no count off. They said it was you, and I said, yeah, and they came over and went, we bow to you, we bow to you. I said, do I have any scars? It felt like I had the shit kicked out of me, man. I went home from that gig and I went, that's the hardest thing I ever had to do.
Oh, man.
Right. Here's the second hardest. Michael Omartian, Rhythm Heritage. I was actually in the band when there was actually a band, but Dean was in the band, to so to speak, and some other guys, whoever was available. Anyway, Omartian wrote this song called The Last Night on Earth. It's 3 sections. It's 17 minutes long, and it got glued together. So after they mixed, they just pieced it all together. There wasn't any chord changes on my chart. None. Okay? It's all double stops, single stops, double stops, triple stops. And I had to play it in the pendulum field because I knew it was funk, right? So I'm stroking all the strings and I'm doing the right hand dance that we know real well of muting while I'm doing this, so I've got nothing ringing through. Okay? I circled the DS, circled the coda. You know, I looked at the map, what ending to take. And I was reading all the time then. My chops couldn't have been better. And I just said, I'm going to go for it. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to see what I can put myself through if I can make it. I made it. And here's, in the second, was a run through and then this. Okay, now there's some other sections will come up. New section. Victor. A little greasy there on one note.
No chords. No chords.
No chords.
Just dots.
Okay. Didn't say volume pedal, but I played it with emotion. I'll send you the audio so you can dub it in. mean, this is simple reading here, but still interpretation.
Beautiful.
Sound workshop. What was that called? The place behind
producers workshop behind mastering lab.
behind mastering lab.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, look, guys, this is not anything like what Dean had to play, but still.
Well, I mean, with no chord, I always
No chords.
I tell
No
you what,
chords.
I when I see triads written for me, I always
Write out the name of
some
them.
little
Yeah.
write up the
I
name.
just went for
I
it.
don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy.
But you're a great reader. What a lot of people don't know about you is you're an excellent woodwind player. He played lead alto in the North Texas State Band and played guitar in the 2 o'clock. He played in the best band was the 1 o'clock band. He played lead alto. Hungate played lead bone.
No,
And then-
he played bass. He played lead bone in 2 o'clock.
I thought it was the other way around.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you would know. And then you played guitar in the 2 o'clock band.
Yeah.
And then there was a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock band. Dean playing lead alto. If you don't think that's hard reading.
Well, that's reading, yeah.
Yeah.
And that teaches you reading.
But
because
that's
you end
right.
up reading like 2 bars ahead.
Can you read that far ahead?
Yeah. Well, if it's a fast tempo. But you know, patterns are really only a finite number of rhythms. So you recognize those after a while,
Yeah.
and you're not.
You're not even reading them after a while. Then
Exactly
you
right,
Just
yeah.
recognize the patterns, what they
Yeah,
sound like.
You don't have to look down when you're playing alto.
Oh, that's exactly right. And there's only one A.
And there's only
Yeah.
one A.
And so without
Only
the
one A.
yeah,
That's the A on flute too, right?
yeah.
Man.
When I was a bass major, classical bass in college, my undergrad, and I always read on bass, and you'd never look at your hand. I mean, you just play.
What's
You never-
amazing on bass because
Yeah.
Come on,
you
Rick.
have to
Really?
know when you do a shift.
Yeah.
That's part of what you practice probably.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
You just you go here if you're playing solo, you play in thumb position. You come back down. And you just
Yeah,
I never looked at my hand ever.
Interesting. Yeah.
Never looked at my
Because you
left
can't.
hand.
You can't.
You can't. No, you're reading the music. You know.
Yeah. So I would like to hear you talk about your process for recording for Rick Springfield.
Okay.
Because I heard about you. I didn't know you yet, but we were all talking about Tim Pierce, that he takes the track home and he works out a part or...
No, it actually wasn't that. Neil Giraldo did that amazing... I actually interviewed Neil a couple of days ago. He did all the guitars on Jesse's Girl. And that was kind of the model for what happened next. I got the demos, so I was able to learn the riffs at home.
Got
But
it.
all the solos we did, and there was one record where we did a lot of really, really... solos that still hold up. They're pretty fiery, they're pretty, they're guitarist kind of solos. We invented those in the studio, so I didn't prepare for those, but I had plenty of time. We punched in quite a bit. But the amazing thing about that is the rig we used, we copied Neil Giraldo's rig, which was a pair of Marshall combo amps that only he had. Jim Marshall abandoned them because they were too heavy for people to lift. They were 100-watt Marshalls in 212 combo amps, and we used EVM 12Ls. And I think you guys at a certain point probably switched to EVM 12Ls too.
Yeah, that's right.
But in those
80s.
those
Yes.
little gray
Right
Yeah,
there.
little
Yeah.
indoor-outdoor carpeting.
Right
that was
there.
the studio guitar cabinet.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But I don't think it's no more of that. It's
sound,
V30s
they're
now.
ported or something. Anyway, we got amazing sounds out of clean speakers, and we
Yeah.
take Marshall 100-watt JCM 800s, and use clean speakers. But I never prepared for those solos.
Yeah, the solos were a collaboration with you and the producers, right?
With me and Rick, really.
Oh, right.
And because Bill Drescher was like Hugh Padgham. He was an engineer.
Right.
And he didn't really offer musical ideas. He just was a great engineer and mixer. So it was really between me and Rick. And we kind of bonded.
And he was a guitar player. So.
A great guitar player. So he could show me
Really?
stuff. Yeah. He's really... He plays too hard, and when he performs, that gets out of control. But he plays guitar great.
Yeah.
Have you learned your solos?
No, I always played the solos because I joined his band.
Oh, I
And for
did.
5 years, I toured with them. So,
I dig.
Yeah. So, and then after that, after I left and became a studio musician, I stayed home. He had guitar players in the band. He was never the lead player in the band, but I did get to actually play some great guitar.
As I've told you, Rick, in our conversations, the money gets exponentially worse from the 6th fret and above on guitar, okay? We know that, okay? The nut to the 5th fret is a register, and it's called the cash register. And I can prove that. Okay. Here's a little chord melody arrangement that's not in the cash register. Anyway, that's
Yo,
not.
That's great.
Thank you,
a
guys.
handful of guitar right there.
What's that?
Handful of guitar right there.
A great explanation, man.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
That guitar has the Evertune system in it.
Yes, it does.
And what I realized in talking to you a little while ago is you use the Evertune, and check me on this, to keep it in tune when you're using different pressure on the frets.
Yes, that's the only reason I use it.
Because what people don't know about him or do know is that you have to hear everything totally in tune or else you go insane.
Nuts.
So
Yeah, I didn't know that about you.
this is what I didn't realize about the Evertune. You're using it so that you can put different pressure on the frets and still play perfectly in
Right.
tune. I never realized that.
I
I missed out on that benefit. That's amazing.
I was a Ted Green fan.
Right.
He was my teacher, and he was a pal, and
Yeah.
he was in awe of this cat. And I learned all those hard stretches, and I hurt myself too many times. So I got eliminated the root so I could actually play without being in too much pain. You know, he just practiced this, man.
Yeah,
in me
that's wild.
second nature. And like we talked about, he learned to apply pressure in either direction he needed to get the note in tune. I don't have the patience for that. When I grab this stuff, I'm pulling strings. As you can see, I'm even bending strings up as I'm grabbing
Yeah,
them.
doesn't matter with Evertune. Then.
Doesn't matter. And that's why I have it for rhythm guitar. That's the main reason. Here's another trick that I was talking to Dean about before you guys got here. When I play a solo, I want to be the second guy. Or if I'm trading fours, I want to be the guy that plays after somebody so I can be inspired, so I won't start with a lick. I won't just go where I'd normally go. So here's a demonstration of that. I am playing first. It doesn't matter. Oh, I made it.
All right, so I have a question for you guys.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's bebop vocabulary, right? So why is bebop vocabulary, why is that disappeared from popular music?
In the 60s, bebop was still vital, and there was still invention happening. You know, you can think of a lot of great 60s albums, you know, the rhythm section for Miles Davis. And
1964, Four and More album is my favorite album of all time.
So I think that rock players, there are some of them that were big fans of that because there was invention happening there. I mean, even Brubeck, and that was on the radio. Those things.
It was
were
the
on
last
radio,
hit of a tune that was a jazz tune, and it was in 5/4 hit on the radio.
I know.
So
Crazy.
I wonder if it's
Crazy.
just that simple, that the people that were writing songs and groups had that in their love basket, you know, and so when they wrote songs for their own group, Earth, Wind, and Fire, you think of, you know, they expanded on it. So maybe later in the 90s, no one grew up listening to inventive music. It was all old music. By that point, it wasn't being invented.
Nirvana showed up,
when
and the record labels went that direction too.
Well, I mean, guys like
Nirvana,
me, I was influenced by jazz, and I was, you know, the same age as the guys in Nirvana, a couple years older.
You're
but-
from a musical family.
well,
You were exposed to it.
if you think about the Beatles, music from the 60s, those guys grew up. John Lennon was born in 1940, right? So he grew up hearing big band music. They heard skiffle and things like that that were happening in England at the time. But what were the chord things that they were hearing, the type of chord progressions they were hearing? You heard line cliches all the time. I mean, the types of things that were in there. So they had augmented chords, diminished chords, half diminished chords.
Yep.
You know, but you didn't necessarily have dominant 7, flat 9, flat 5s like in here, or half diminished chords. You'd have some half diminished chords, but they would typically resolve differently. You might go B half diminished to B flat major 7 or something.
Yeah.
The Beatles might do something like that. Whereas here you'd do B half diminished to E7 flat 9 flat 5 or something. You know?
Sure.
Right? And it's different vocabulary. A jazz player would be informed by something like that. So the people that grew up in from the 50s hearing that music, they heard the hard bop, and they heard those more altered scales and things like that, half whole diminished scales and that language, right? So you guys were informed by that.
We definitely were. I mean, 85 or 86 was the cutoff.
Right.
That was
Well, it's
Sydney.
MTV, since British bands had already been making videos, as I understand it, that sort of overtook the music business when MTV came along, because there was so much content. They just play stuff that had been hits in Europe, so it became Europe bands, and maybe Europe bands weren't as informed by American jazz music as they were by blues and simpler pop tunes.
And Machines
And
came
then
along.
so it got off during, you know, that was British all through the early days of MTV. And then it, you know, everybody caught up and started funding videos for U.S. groups and stuff like that. So it could be just that little drought changed what
Changed the
passes
course
as a
of-
pop record.
Yeah.
And I heard that Steely Dan even wasn't getting great airplay, but there was a promoter at ABC that just completely was in love with them and wouldn't stop promoting them.
It takes
Good
something
trick
like
for
that
that.
to do it from the inside.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, Dean.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
That's what I had heard. But
We were the last golden era, man. And you know, I mean, you guys are still
well, I
working.
don't know. You know, you see Jacob Collier.
Okay, that's
Snarky
another
Puppy,
story.
And,
That's
there's,
another story.
It's there's
It's
stuff
out there.
there.
It's out there.
It's out
It's
there.
awkward now because there's no money in the music business, it's all free.
That's the problem.
That's awkward, so.
Hey, I've got a test for you guys. I wanted to write a song that had ascending chords with a turnaround. And I want you to tell me when you think something's going on. Someone stop me when you think something a little unusual is going on. Okay?
Stop.
There's a man crouching looking at the computer.
That seems very
unusual.
strange. That's very unusual. Very odd. What do we do about it, Dean?
I think intervention
That
is
really funny,
called for.
guys. Come on.
Ride to the other side, somewhere out beyond space and time. In your red cabriolet, your little quantum runaway, buckle up and love will show the way. Slowly turn the key
Anything happening yet?
in this fantasy.
Anything weird?
Light me up and let the games begin.
I'm going to play it again. It's modulating a half step every time, but you don't realize it for a while. You don't really realize it for maybe until you get to the fifth pass, unless you have perfect pitch. But it doesn't sound like it's modulating. And also, it was a bitch to find a different lick in every hole.
Take me for a ride to the other side, somewhere out beyond space and time. In your red cabriolet,
So that's a different key?
Yep.
little quantum runaway,
You don't hear it?
I didn't catch it.
Nope.
love will show the way. Slowly turn the key. Let's begin this fantasy.
It's a Rubik's Cube.
Never knew. I didn't know this was going to happen. But you can tell my voice is getting higher.
Take me for a ride
Now there's a low harmony.
to the other side, somewhere out beyond space and time. In your red cabriolet,
It's cool, though.
It's a fake out.
Yeah.
buckle up and love will show the way. Slowly turn the key.
I could tell in the second half of the progression it's like a change, but that's the only. I can now I begin to hear it.
It's only at the. It's always the same.
I'm only going on faith.
Yeah.
I don't really
Everyone,
Still keeps going.
now here we come.
Would never stop if I didn't stop it.
Lost inside the fog for hours. Blow past all the chaff.
You can hear him singing higher.
Don't slow down
Yeah. They're in way different registers.
Right.
Plug my iPod in. Turn it up to 10. Check out Freddie driving Basie's band.
Freddie's driving Basie's band.
That's cool.
That's all for now. Leave a comment. Love to know your thoughts. Hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching.